We have this idea that this is what we're going to do with our life. We're going towards it. It's our dream. And then we decide maybe this isn't the thing that's for me. Maybe that's something else. I'm a different person now. I've grown. I've evolved into a different version of me. And now I can pivot to be more true to who that newer version is.
I'd love to know, when did you get started as a nutritionist? When did you decide that this was going to be the path for you?
Sure. So I, like most people who go into the nutrition field, was struggling with some health issues myself. And I did a lot of research on my own, as people do, read a lot of books, but there was something that was just missing. I didn't understand the biochemistry behind all of it. I understood bits and pieces like you do when you do your self-research, but I really wanted to come to a place where I had a really broad, well-rounded understanding of the science behind nutrition. So I decided to go to graduate school. So I got my master's of science in human nutrition, and I learned a lot. And there was a lot that I was missing in my self-research. So from there, I started my own practice. And then the start of my own practice, I learned a lot about clinical work, which was completely different from the academic work that I learned. So my health issues that I had struggled with was mainly gut stuff, which a lot of people struggle with, gut and anxiety and mild depression that I felt like wasn't necessarily situational, but I felt like it was chemical. And you can kind of tease the two out, right? So for me, when I feel like there's some sort of chemical anxiety, I feel like this buzzing in my body, and I think about what's going on in my life, and I'm not necessarily fixated on anything in particular. It's just this kind of random sensation that is coming from my body. So me delving into nutrition was there has to be some way that I could rectify this through maybe the food that I eat. And through my experience, I've realized that is still just a very small part of the puzzle.
Yeah. What were the things that you were eating when you're dealing with this low-level anxiety, depression, or maybe mid-level or high-level?
I would say because I had a lot of gut dysfunction, I had a lot of food sensitivities. So when you have gut dysfunction, it can create sensitivities to sometimes almost everything that you're eating. So it's not really the food's fault, but it's the integrity of your gut that's causing the sensitivity. So it's confusing for somebody because you think, okay, all these things that I'm eating are hurting me. Then what are you going to eat if you take all that away?
Right.
Or are you just not going to eat food? So I learned that the foundation of having a good gut health, good nutritional health, is to have a strong gut. And that takes sometimes months to heal, and also testing to know exactly what's going on. Sometimes removal of the foods that you're eating and then reintroducing them. But everybody has a different source to their gut issues, which makes it a little bit complicated.
Yeah. And you think the testing helps decipher what the issues are, but then beyond that, there has to be maybe a removal and a fresh start, like a clearing out of the gut microbiome?
Yeah, I think testing is very helpful, but typically with my clients, I start without testing. Because testing is typically pretty expensive. A functional gut test will probably run you around anywhere between $500 to $700. Which for some people, that's not an issue. But for most people, they don't want to go that route. But if I'm working with a client and they're having a lot of gas and bloating, they're having sensitivities to food, they're breaking out, they're feeling unwell, they're having that mild anxiety, we can kind of extrapolate what's going on. We can remove some foods that are common triggers, like gluten, dairy, some things that they already know that they're reactive to, which is bio-individual. So we'll remove those and replace them with easier to digest foods. So typically low FODMAP foods. The thing is, though, is people's sensitivities are really, really individual. So working with somebody one-on-one and checking in, how did this meal make you feel? Having them keep a food diary can be really helpful for figuring out what their specific trigger is. And then once you start working with somebody, you get to know, okay, maybe it's not just food. Maybe it's the environment they're living in. Maybe it's their job. Maybe it's their relationship. Maybe it's their relationship to themselves. And when I said that food is only a small part of the equation, that I just mentioned is probably maybe 60% of the equation that also needs to be addressed.
Wow. So when you're working, because you work individually, private clients, one-on-one, how much of these other conversations are you having with people beyond just food? Because you talk to people and your nutritionist, and obviously you want to hear their, you know, what they're eating, when they're eating, things like that. But then beyond that, how far do you go into like, well, I'm having a relationship issue, or I'm living in a home, it's stressful. Like where does that line start to become created or drawn?
Well, it depends on the individual if they want to feel open to talking to me about those things. And and everybody has a different cocktail of how they got into the health position they got into. So for one person, it could solely be, so I would say the easiest client that I have is somebody who has an undiagnosed celiac disease.
Okay.
So they're having a lot of gut issues. You take away gluten and everything is solved.
Wow. How often does that happen?
Not very often, but I would say maybe like I'm kind of guessing, but maybe 1 out of 15 people with gut issues. I would see undiagnosed celiacs. Celiacs is very, very underdiagnosed too.
Right.
And you can develop it later on in life. So sometimes people will have been tested for it like 10 years ago and it was negative. And then now some sort of inflammatory condition set off that autoimmunity. But so that's a really easy case because we just have to remove one food item and most of their problems, if not all of their problems, are solved. What's more difficult is when you're removing things, you're adding in the nutraceuticals for gut healing, and there's still something off. So usually with that case, it's a nervous system imbalance. There's something else going on in their life that's causing these gut issues. So when your nervous system is imbalanced, you typically will have gut disorders as well because the gut and the brain are very, very connected. When our mental health isn't well, it affects our body, mostly our gut, and vice versa. When our gut isn't well, it affects our mental health. So, I mean, I like to talk about it with everybody because when I work with clients, I emphasize that I work with everything that affects our metabolism, and your mental well-being is probably one of the biggest things that affect your metabolism. And I'm a nutritionist. So if somebody was going to say, you know, I'm not really going to focus on my gut, but I'm going to focus on everything else in my life and make sure I'm the happiest, most whole person in the world. Right. I would choose that over somebody focusing on the nutritionist. And I'm over their nutrition, and I'm biased on nutrition, you know?
Right. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. So then when you're talking to people and you're getting a feel for them, because I know I work similarly. I work one-on-one with people. I do a consultation call before we even get started. I'm asking a lot of questions. I think you have a form that people fill out before they get started with you. When you start talking to them, are you listening? Are there cues that you can hear from them that their nervous system is dysregulated, or their breathing sounds off, or they sound tense or tight? Like, are those the kinds of things you're trying to register as well as going over the nutritional piece?
Yeah. Typically people just are outright and tell you. I feel like it's not really that big of a mystery. They'll say, on my intake form, I say, is there any stressors that you've had that are out of the ordinary in the past 6 months or 12 months? And people will say, okay, you know, I moved, I had this job that's really stressful, I'm having this difficult relationship with somebody in my family. And usually just by reading the intake form, you could say, okay, well, we know that this is a big part of the equation.
Right. And then how much will you try to help them on that side of the coin as well? To be like, hey, listen, the work we're doing is really important in terms of your diet and your food. But beyond that, you have to make more of an effort in terms of like down regulating, getting into calmer states, going to get a massage, getting acupuncture, doing, or whatever the modality is that you'd recommend.
Mm-hmm. I would say that that's a really big part of how I work with my clients. Some people, their stress levels are totally fine and they really just have something going on in their gut that needs healing.
Right.
So that person isn't going to need so much of that stuff.
Sure.
But I would say like 60 to 70% of the people that I'm working with are having some pretty severe life issues that are creating gut and metabolism issues. So I do a lot of meditation with my clients.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's
so
great.
It's pretty easy to say, hey, don't be so stressed out, you know?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
We all wish that we could do that, but if you don't have an actionable way to teach somebody how to do that, then you know, what are you going to do? So I teach people how to regulate the nervous system, and I use a lot of body scan meditations. I do guided ones with them on the phone. I'll usually incorporate that when a client is talking to me about something and I can tell that their sympathetic nervous system is very activated. So we'll close our eyes, we'll go into meditation, we'll reconnect our body to our mind, we'll find where in our body we're feeling these emotions, we'll give it kind, gentle attention, like you would a child who's tantruming, right?
Right.
Because we're just the same as children and animals deep down at our core, and treating ourselves with that same type of compassion is incredibly healing. So finding those moments where you're dysregulated and then together learning how to re-regulate while we're on the phone is really, really powerful.
And then in terms of like when they're eating, like also probably being stressed while you're eating, like obviously I have 2 small children. A lot of times we have dinner and it's chaotic. And I think I've heard Louis C.K. talk about like you eat standing up and as fast as you can. And sometimes that's what it feels like. It's hard to actually sit down and relax and have a calm meal.
I mean, an ideal world where, doing some breath work before we have this beautiful balanced meal, and connecting to the earth and where it came from and feeling that universal love.
And giving appreciation for the food we're nourishing ourselves with right now. That would be ideal.
That's ideal, but life is rarely ideal. And that's okay. We do the best we can with what we're given and try not to feel the guilt about it, because the guilt is what's going to get you. Yeah. More so than the actual action of not being quote unquote perfect.
Right.
So doing what you can, being as present as you can with toddlers. And the thing with having toddlers is they're not always going to be toddlers.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So we have these moments in our life that are more demanding than other moments, and just accepting that and doing what we can and carving out the time where we can, when we can do it, and not feeling bad about it,
Yeah.
So that's kind of the best advice that I can give you there. And also, if you're finding that eating with the kids is too chaotic and it feels dysregulating, maybe finding times where you're eating not with the kids.
Yeah.
Where they're having a mealtime separate from you.
Right.
Maybe one partner can take care of the kids while somebody has a silent meal to themselves, and then vice versa. You can kind of tag team that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of working with different clients and finding different, issues out, like how much of the problem solving is scientific and how much does it feel like is more intuitive?
It's both. It has to be both.
Okay.
Yeah. So everything that I do is based on science, and I feel very, very passionate and strongly about that.
Yeah.
Because if there isn't good research behind something, it's difficult. I don't feel ethically good about suggesting that somebody do it. If somebody wants to do something that isn't harmful, I'm not going to tell somebody not to do something. It's making them feel better. I'm going to support their decisions. But it's a combination of both, and knowing how far somebody can go with my recommendations and not pushing somebody too much. Everybody has a different capacity of what they can handle in their life. Some people can go full speed at 100%, and other people can do like 5% at a time. And that's where the intuition comes into play. Because I don't want anybody to ever feel overwhelmed. I don't want anybody to ever feel bad that they don't think that they're doing enough. Like, we're always doing as much as we can with what we have. And that's always enough. So meeting people where they are, with their capacity, with their time constraints. Some people have a lot of time. Some people don't. Some people are busy working parents, and they don't have the time that somebody who's maybe retired, doesn't have children in the house, and has a lot of time to focus on their health. So those are 2 totally different people with 2 totally different lifestyles and 2 totally different nutritional needs. So everybody's coming from a different place, and that's okay.
And culturally, like, you come from California, right?
Yeah.
But you spent a lot of time in New York. Did you notice just culturally big differences between the way people ate and the levels of stress coming from California, going to New York? Was that kind of jarring to you once you got to New York, that people are just eating like in this completely stressed state, crushing food fast while they're like getting 10 things done? Yeah.
New York and California definitely do have cultural differences. New York is much more fast paced and maybe less, as a generalization, maybe less mindful with nutritional choices in California. California, it's so cultural that we're thinking about our bodies, nutrition. People typically have more time. We're out in the sunshine. The weather's always nice. We're a little more laid back. I mean, I love New York. I love California for their different, special things that they have. But I was surprised, actually, when I moved to New York. I was like, people are really fast paced. People are kind of like extremely career oriented, extremely goal oriented. Yeah. People move to New York because they have a dream that they're chasing, mostly, if you're not from there. Right. So whatever that dream is, it's that you're putting your heart, your soul into that dream. And sometimes there's a hyper focus there where we forget about our well-being, our mental well-being, and our mentally and physically. we kind of forget about that when you're hyper focused on a goal. But
Yeah.
the thing is if you don't focus on that, then you're going to burn out reaching that goal. So it's really important for your health and for the things that you're trying to achieve in your life.
Did you find it hard? And when you were in New York, were you already on the path into nutrition, or were you doing something else at that time?
No, I was acting at the time.
Oh, cool.
So I moved from San Francisco and I did a lot of theater acting there. And then I moved to New York to pursue theater acting. And it's hard. I think anybody could relate to that, moving to New York to become an actress. Like, I was very young when I moved to New York. So it was a cool experience. But I thought, I like performing. I love the art of theater, but I also want to do something where I'm not in the spotlight, where I'm working with people one-on-one. I can be at home. It's a little more controlled. Like, I have a little more control over the trajectory of the outcome, because there's so many other dependent factors when you're trying to act. So when I was in New York, I decided that I wanted to take a career change. And that's when I decided to go to grad school.
Okay. Yeah, it's a grind in New York, in any field. It doesn't matter what you do. I always think of, when I teach seminars in New York, I always, it's all different types of people that come. And I always think, no matter what field you're in New York, there's at least 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 people in your same field. And they're probably very high level, and they're competing with you on some level for those roles, those positions, for those jobs. And everyone's really like grinding to get to their goals, because it's not an easy place to live.
It's not an easy place to live, but I have to say it's a very magical place to live. It
definitely is.
I love it. I just didn't have the energy for it anymore. I think some people get to that place in their life and then we move on, and other people just strap in and stick with it, and more power to them. I admire that.
It's tough too, I think, because once you start to learn so much about the nervous system and the way the body functions and the way you're supposed to feel all the time, you realize how intense that situation and that environment, those environmental stressors are on you. It takes a severe toll.
It does, yeah. And it takes sometimes a bigger toll on certain people than others. Some people have the wherewithal to really thrive in that environment, and other people don't. And kind of understanding, who are you? Are you the person that thrives, or are you the person that doesn't? And if you're not, it's okay to try something else. It's okay to pivot in life. And that's something that I've learned. Like, we have this idea that this is what we're going to do with our life, and we're going towards it. It's our dream. And then we decide, maybe this isn't the thing that's for me. Maybe that's something else. I'm a different person now. I've grown. I've evolved into a different version of me. And now I can pivot to be more true to who that newer version is.
Yeah. And how lucky to find a practice, or to find something that you used for yourself to heal yourself, and then find that to be a passion to help others with that passion, with that expertise, with that knowledge that you gained from your own healing journey.
Yeah, I love it. I am so
I can tell.
happy.
When I met you the first time, I could tell. I was like, I could just feel like your energy around talking about it and the excitement around it. Not even specific to nutrition, because I remember talking about meditation, Reiki, breath work, all these other modalities. I could just feel the energy and the excitement you had and the enthusiasm you had for just wellness. And that is a lifestyle, not just as a fad or a trend.
Absolutely. And I love people. I love working with people. I feel so connected with the clients that I work with. And when I get a message or an email or a phone call and, hey, I feel so much better, or this thing I've been working on, I finally got there. There's no better feeling in the world for me. And I will stop at no end to help my clients achieve their goals. And the thing that I've also learned through clinical practice is the things that have worked for me in my healing journey are not the things that are going to work for other people.
Right.
Everyone's so different. It's like a puzzle. It's what's going to help Susie? What's going to help Bill? You know what I mean? It's like figuring out their puzzle, how to speak to them in a way that they're going to really hear me and trust me, and finding the science behind how I'm going to correct the metabolic imbalances that they have. It's really cool, and I really like it.
you do need to build a certain level of trust too, because you're trying to figure out this math equation or this puzzle with them on the fly. You know, you're like in the battle with them in those moments, and you're trying to figure out, you know, what works, what doesn't work. And obviously certain things are going to affect people's systems differently. So if there's like a wrong step or a misstep, you have to take a step backwards, go a different direction. Then that trust is so important that they're not losing faith in the journey that you two are on together.
Yeah, for sure. And it's an incredibly collaborative process. I'm not a talking head telling somebody what to do. I tell all my clients, you're the expert of your body. You're living in your body. You're experiencing the things of your body. I'm here to help guide you. So you're always the authority, you know?
Yeah.
And so somebody needs to trust me and tell me what's going on in their body and tell me the reactions that they're having to the treatments that we're undergoing, and how is this working, how is this not working. If I suggest something that I'm sure is going to work and it doesn't, I need to leave my ego at the door. It didn't work. We need to try something else.
Right. Mm-hmm. Do you find it's challenging ever? Because I know in my work, I find a lot of people that are really disconnected to their bodies, and they actually have lost faith in their ability to heal and get better and move into a better place, whether, you know, they're dealing with like a sense of hypochondria, or they're feeling like just very down on their overall well-being and their health, and nothing has worked to this point. So there's almost like a negative connotation when it comes to this body-mind connection.
I would say that by the time somebody's looking to work with me, I think they're really motivated. I would say I've been really lucky that I have pretty good compliance and I have pretty good motivation. And definitely, of course, when I work with people, there's moments where they feel really discouraged.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like everything's going uphill the whole time and everyone's feeling, once they start talking to me, everything's perfect. That's not reality. That's not life. Yeah. So there's definitely like peaks and valleys in the progress. And in the valley, there's disappointment, frustration, things like that we work through. But I'd say as a whole, people, even in those valleys of disappointment, they're still very motivated to get better and will try things. In general, I guess I wouldn't say I have that much of a difficult time. Sometimes I feel terrible when somebody is having that frustration, but I also understand that that's part of the process. It's part of the growth process. Yeah,
for sure. Was there a point in your journey in this space where you realized this is for me? Like, this is exactly what I want to do. I'm in the right room, or I'm talking to the right people, or I'm just feeling like this is the exact space I'm supposed to be operating in?
Yeah, I would say in the beginning, I think when you're working with people, especially one-on-one, in the beginning of your practice, you get really nervous.
Yeah.
You know, like, should I be doing this? Am I the right person for this person? Can I actually help them? Do I know what I'm talking about? But with time, I realized, wow, these people are getting better. Well, look at the lab improvement. Look at the gut improvement. Look at the quality of life improvement. People are happy. So that really built my confidence that people were getting so much better, and also that I liked it. So it's not just that I felt like I was doing my job in a way that made me feel proud. I also enjoyed doing that job. So those two things together, I realized this is my job. I like this. This is what I'm going to keep doing and growing into.
And how long have you been doing it officially? Like, since you went to grad school and when you got started seeing clients?
So I did health coaching before I went to grad school. So I would say probably I'm on 7 going on 8 years of doing this. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just curious, in Mexico, have you found like a new client base there, or your clients are mostly based here in the States still?
So my clients are mostly based in California, New York, some Miami, some Colorado. And I think that's about it. But mostly California, I would say, because I have a history in New York, so I get referrals from there. I don't work with people in Mexico because there's such a cultural difference.
Right.
And I really think so. Okay, there's the biochemistry of nutrition. There's also the cultural implications of nutrition. I think is very, very strong. And also I'm familiar with like our societal views on food and our bodies in a way that I feel is very American. And I don't know if I would be the right person for somebody not from my culture.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Plus, I don't speak Spanish.
Not yet, not completely. You're probably getting better though.
I'm getting better. Yeah, I'm getting better.
Yeah,
it's a work in progress for sure.
Are you practicing day? I mean, obviously you're there, so you're in it. Are you feeling like every day you're using it, speaking it, listening to it?
Yes, every day I do use it, that I'm outside of my house. Sometimes I'm in my house working all day.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you work from home a lot.
I work from home a lot. I mean, I go to workout classes, and that's all in Spanish, so I get that. But I'm taking classes. I'm making a very strong effort to learn. Yeah. It's just slow. I'm not young. It's different.
Yeah, totally. And it's a whole different part of your brain, I'm guessing, than when you learn nutrition. And it's a good thing to do, though, to exercise that part of your brain, because it is a workout. When you have to speak Spanish or another language for hours at a time, it's exhausting.
It paves new neural pathways. There's a lot of research on that. Learning a new language is really, really helpful for paving new neural pathways, which is helpful for anxiety, depression, learning, retention of information. Yeah. So,
I actually just started learning a new language this year too.
What language?
I'm taking lessons in Japanese once a week.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, a 90-minute lesson once a week. It's really hard. It's not like anything I've ever learned before. And it's really challenging. I just felt like I needed something for my brain that wasn't health and wellness related, that wasn't something for me to, learn more about breathing or stress or the nervous system. Like I just needed something that was completely different.
I understand that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Because I spent there'll be like, weeks where all I read are studies and, new articles on research and, Instagram, of course, is just flooding me with all new stuff on breathing and wellness. So there was a point where I thought I needed to learn something new.
Good for you. I just read a fiction novel because I felt the same way, because I read so much nonfiction. I'm reading so much research. Yeah. And I just need to read some art,
Yeah.
Something that's different.
Yeah. Actually, the last book I finished was a fiction. I'm literally looking at 4 nonfiction books on my desk, like 15 by my nightstand. All nonfiction. Can't finish one of them. I can read 40%, 50%, 20%, 70%, but for some reason I have trouble getting to the end of them. Whereas if it's a fiction and it's a story with a start and end, I really want to know how it ends, and I'll actually go through the whole process of finishing it.
I love that. I sometimes when it starts to get around evening time and I'm getting tired, which is usually when I read, I start to miss the characters in the book that I'm reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, how's George doing? I want to know. It's like you get to be in this whole world, this fantasy world, and live in it, which is so cool and magical to me.
Yeah, I don't think, unless it's a biography, there's never been a nonfiction. There's obviously been some that have been really fascinating and interesting that I was curious about, but never one that I felt like I didn't want to go to sleep at night because I wanted to read another chapter. Like that's never happened with a nonfiction for me personally. I've never been reading or it's like, I just need to know what happens next or where this, this research goes. Like, it's just like, okay, I got my chapter in, we're good. Let's get to bed, whatever it is. But with nonfiction, I will actually like stay up later, rather fiction. I'll stay up later to finish the book or a story that I'm genuinely interested in.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm kind of the same way. I like to get through the nonfiction because I want to learn. I'm reading right now, actually, which I'm shocked I haven't read before, is The Biology of Belief. Okay. I haven't. I'm going to write that down right now. Yeah, it's an older book, but it's all about the biology of belief, how our whole metabolism and systems change by our belief systems, and how organisms inside of our body, like our microbiome, or organisms like you and me in a community, tend to thrive when we're working together and helping each other. Yeah, so it's kind of that collective society over individualism. At least that's where I am in the book right now. Not too far, but that's what I'm learning about now. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. And I've been hearing a lot more. My wife, my partner, Libby, who you've worked with, she's reading a book on manifestation and just positive thought process around, just
healing and you know, getting things in life that you want for yourself, and just manifesting these positive thoughts to help you build, you know, a life that you want and that you actually want to go for. Do you see that with any of your clients? Like, do you do anything with your clients where you start to build in positive language around this process that you think helps them in the long run?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say I love Libby. I absolutely love her.
Yeah.
So thank you for
she loves you too.
her to me.
Yeah. No, my pleasure.
Yeah. And it's the same thing as the biology of belief, right? When we believe something, we can manifest it. We unconsciously, where we think, unconsciously, if we think about what we deserve or the direction that we're heading, we're going to kind of go that way. It's like when you're driving a car, where your vision is where you're going to drive unconsciously.
Right.
So it's kind of the same with our brain. Do I work with manifestation with my clients? In a way, I think in a roundabout way. I think I more heavily work on balancing the nervous system than actually doing manifestations. Maybe I should. You know?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't necessarily do manifestation. I'll describe it to you. You tell me if you think it's manifestation. But I'll be working with someone that, let's say, is blocked in a way where they just feel like they're not in connection to their body. When I get them into this hypnagogic, very calm, very relaxed state, and I see them, I can tell by the way they're breathing. I can see by the look in their face. Like, a lot of times we're very clenchy in our face when we're living our lives. It's just our natural, like, sort of resting bee face. I'll see them lose that in breath work, where they're just lying there and they're totally relaxed. And then it's towards the end of the session, and then I'll just start saying these things to them, like, you know, you have this deep connection to your body. You need to listen to that. You need to trust that. You need to feel that your body and you are moving in the right direction. Believe in that, like, really feel that, and know that, like, know that your body is healing in this state. Cause I genuinely believe in that deeply parasympathetic state. That is a healing state. So if you feel that and believe that and connect to that and resonate in that space, then you are in fact moving into that healing space. So trying to, you know, really, like, add some depth to that experience for them, where they can actually tangibly feel like, I'm healing now. I'm in a healing state. It's through my breath that connects to my body, connects to my nervous system, calms the mind down. You know, and I'll say things like, you're lowering inflammation here, you're slowing your heart rate down. And a lot of people, like, in the beginning, when I start working with them, when I ask them to use interoception to feel their heart beating, like, just feel that natural beat, that stresses them out. Like, that makes them uncomfortable. And that's something that we work towards. We work towards starting to create a positive thought around feeling your heartbeat and feeling your digestion kick on. Like, cause there's times I'm doing breath work with people, especially in person, where I'll actually start to hear their stomach churning in the beginning of breath work. All of a sudden, like, you'll hear their stomach just moving fluid, or, I mean, you would know way better than me what's happening there. And it's like, I was like, do you hear that? Like, I'm guessing your stomach's moving into a digestive state because you're more relaxed and your body's able to, like, let go of this tension. And even things like, do you feel your mouth becoming more salivated? That's also a signal of your parasympathetic side. Like, start to notate these natural movements in your nervous system and feel that those things are positive for your overall well-being. And try to, like, highlight those, because those aren't necessarily, like, you know, ticking boxes of wins, but they can be really positive markers for people to start to really feel like, all right, I am getting relaxed, and this is my body's way of telling me that we're hitting that state.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what's happening with the gurgling, with the breath work, when there's an uptick in serotonin, which is our feel-good neurotransmitter, serotonin plays a big role in gut motility and secretion. So the gut is moving because of that serotonin. It's also secreting more stuff. So you're prioritizing digestion at that point when you're in that parasympathetic state.
Right.
And yeah, I do something very similar. So when I bring people through the meditations, especially if somebody's having, like, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated, I can't do this, or they're having a lot of negative self-talk or negative perceptions on themselves or something else, we go through the meditation or whatever modality that we're choosing to use. I bring them to that parasympathetic state, and then I say, okay, well, what do you think about that situation now? Because that's your truth.
Right.
When we're in that sympathetic state, we're not really speaking from our heart. We're speaking from a lot of other things that is not really our true self. But when we're in that parasympathetic state, we're speaking from our heart, from our body, from a place of honesty.
Yeah.
That's grounded honesty, I should say.
Right.
And I think you're really wise to explain to your clients, okay, this is lowering inflammation, this is doing this is doing that. I had an acupuncture that I really, really loved in New York, and he used to tell me that his teacher taught him that you need to work with the medicine. So when I recommend a supplement or a dietary intervention or a lifestyle intervention to a client, I tell them why, and I explain the mechanisms behind it.
Yeah.
Because if they understand why, they're going to be more compliant, and it's going to work better for them than them blindly doing something. Placebo is real, and placebo is not bad. When you're measuring the outcome of an intervention, there's the actual biochemical outcome of that intervention plus placebo. They're both.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so if you want to make sure that somebody understands and believes, like you said, so this is maybe circling back to, this is part of the manifestation, believe that if they do this thing, it's going to be helpful. That belief is going to help that thing be more helpful.
Right. I've heard the same with exercise too. When you go to the gym, if you're exercising and not necessarily self-talking yourself into thinking you're getting bigger muscles or getting stronger or getting more, fit. But if you do have that positive awareness and maybe there is a bit of self-talk, like it's a quiet self-talk on these exercises or these movements are helping me become stronger or whatever the goal is, that they're actually going to be a more impactful experience at the gym, meaning the results are going to be higher based on that positive placebo experience of having that self-talk.
There's this really cool study, and I'm going to butcher it because I don't know all of the metrics. I don't have them all memorized, but there was 2 groups of housekeepers in a hotel, and they asked both of the groups of ladies, do you do exercise? And they said, no, I don't do any exercise. I'm too busy. I'm working all the time. And they told one group, actually, what you're doing with your housekeeping is really physically laborious, and this is exercise. You can build muscle, and they explained to them all the positive outcomes from their labor at work. And then they measured outcomes of these 2 groups, and the group that knew what they were doing was physical exercise. A lot of their markers improved. Wow. Now, who knows? Maybe if they knew that, they were working harder while they were cleaning. Like there's a lot of confounding variables that could come into play. But they believed, hey, I'm doing this stuff that's really healthy. And maybe because they believed that, when they went home, they didn't want to order a pizza. They're like, I just did all this hard work. I'm going to have a more health supportive meal. Know, so that could be part of it as well, which is still counts, right?
Right. I mean, and in terms of breathing, if they feel like they're doing work that's not enjoyable and they're not connected to it and they're holding their breath and they're sighing throughout the whole experience and they're just kind of grumpy about it, they're not really connecting to their nervous system as they're doing it. They're sort of in this agitated state. Whereas if they feel like they're doing something good for themselves and they're breathing into it and they're connected through the whole experience, that's going to be maybe a more nourishing and more beneficial experience for them because they actually have that connection through their breath, their body, and their mind as they're going through it.
Absolutely. And there's a level of self-confidence that we achieve when we're respecting our body. Yeah. When we do things that are self-respectful to our mental and our physical health, we become more confident as people.
Yeah. And I think for me, when it comes to the food stuff, in eating, there must be have you seen any studies around people that eat healthier foods in a calmer, more grateful way have higher benefits than someone that eats the same meal, but they I always think of working in tech and being at my table, we'd sit at these big communal tables and one of my bosses would sit there and he would mash a sweet green salad and he'd be in front of his laptop. He's just crunching, eating, typing on Slack. And I was just dude, there's no way that could be good for you. You might as well have a Big Mac, you're just mashing through this salad that, I get it. It's sweet green, but whatever. It's not, have you gone or reviewed any studies in terms of the state someone in and how that affects the way they're receiving the nutrients from the food?
That's a really great question. And I can't cite you a study per se, but I can explain to you the mechanisms of what's happening to your digestion when you're in a sympathetic state.
Please.
So when we're in a sympathetic state, our body perceives that we're under danger somehow. It perceives that we're in some sort of physical danger specifically. So if we get a stressful email from our boss, we're going to be in that sympathetic state. Our body doesn't understand that we're actually physically safe. It doesn't understand the difference between the two. So we're going to shut down our digestion. We're not going to shut it down, but we're going to deprioritize it basically, because our body wants to prioritize our thinking so that if we have to make a quick, rational decision to keep ourselves safe, it's also going to prioritize energy to our muscles. So how it does that, it's going to raise stress hormones like cortisol, because cortisol is going to release glucose that's stored in our muscles, a little bit in our liver, but mostly our muscles. That's called glycogen. So we're always running off of glucose, whether we're eating it or not. So we get stressed like that. We're releasing glucose that's stored in our muscle because our brain is a huge consumer of glucose. And that's how we're going to be able to think in these situations where our body thinks we're under threat. Digestion takes a huge amount of energy. So that's going to be deprioritized. And those other processes, our mind and our muscles, is going to be prioritized so that we can run away and think quickly. But this day and age, we're not really running away from a lot of physical danger. Sometimes we are, like if I'm walking down the street and a car almost hits me, my body's going to go into that fight or flight, and I'm going to run out of the way, think quickly, get myself into safety. And that's how that mechanism works, is supposed to work, basically. It's not supposed to be turned on when we're looking at a stressful email, but it is, because it's evolutionary.
Right.
So when we're in that state and we're hounding a sweet green salad or a Big Mac or whatever it is, our body shuts down or deprioritizes, digestion, which means that we're not having as much motility regulators and we're not having as much secretion. So what do I mean by secretion? When we're in a parasympathetic state, our body will prioritize secreting things like hydrochloric acid, bile, digestive enzymes. The hydrochloric acid is in our stomach, and that helps break down our macronutrients. Our digestive enzymes help digest and break down carbohydrates, fats, proteins into substances that we can absorb them within our small intestines and assimilate those nutrients. So when we don't have that present, there's not going to be optimal nutrient absorption. And that also, if we don't have those components of our secretion to break down these macronutrients, we can have stomach aches, when carbohydrates are not digested, we get bloated, we get gas, we feel funky digestively. So maybe if you're hounding that sweet green salad, which is incredibly high in fiber, you have a lot of roughage there, and you're in this very hyper sympathetic state of your nervous system, you can end up having a lot of gas and discomfort afterwards. Of course, that's bioindividuality. It's going to happen. It's going to present itself different in each individual. But I see that a lot, especially in tech jobs.
Right.
I work with a lot of people in tech, and what I see often is the case is you have these high stress, high performing jobs where you're hyper focused, that you're in the sympathetic state for so many hours of the day, however many hours you're working, and you're not eating. So what is your body running off of? It's still running off of carbs. It's still running off of glucose, but that's being mobilized by your stress hormones. And we know when stress hormones are elevated chronically, that can create brain fog, anxiety, mild depression, and systemic inflammation, a lot of stuff that we don't want. So taking the time to eat throughout the day, even though you think you're very busy and you don't have the time, it's going to help you from burning out. And it's also going to help you be more productive in your day.
Could that show up as high cholesterol too?
That depends.
And I know that's a very specific question. I just have a client I'm thinking about, as you mentioned, these things that, physically looks the part, like fit, tech guy, can run a marathon and go days without sleeping, eats on paper very correctly and has this beautiful blood work done, but the only thing out of whack is this very high level of cholesterol that him and his brother both have. Maybe it's genetic, maybe not, but
that's a really good question. Yeah, I work a lot with lipid issues. So everybody has a different cocktail of where they've gotten into their high cholesterol issues. And it's typically a combination of genetics, of diet, of lifestyle and environmental factors. And everybody has different ratios of all those things. Typically, if you're looking at somebody who has an ideal diet, who has an ideal fitness, who has ideal stress levels, and they have a really high cholesterol, we can assume it's probably heavy on the genetic side. But when somebody's self-reporting that they have ideal all of those things, you have to take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Maybe they are eating really well during the week, but maybe on the weekends they're drinking a lot. You know, they're going out and they're partying, or, you know, like some of those things are not always self-report. I'm not saying that your friend is doing that.
No, totally.
But there's self-reporting. There's always issues with that, you know, and like working with somebody one-on-one and really breaking things down. We don't want high cholesterol. We especially I really like the marker apolipoprotein B, and a lot of insurance companies are covering that now with standard lipid panels. What that measures is actually the amount of cholesterol particles circulating in our system. So that's a really good marker. So I would have your clients measure that. That can give you a nice baseline if you're doing treatment moving forward. There's a lot of nutraceuticals that are really, really helpful for lowering cholesterol. And heart disease is a disease that is built upon decades. It's not like one day we wake up and we have high cholesterol and it's an issue. It's something that's been contributing. We've been contributing to this issue since we were big children, actually, you know?
Wow.
So if you have somebody young that's starting to see signs of that, nipping it in the bud sooner than possible.
What would be the signs early as a child that you would see for somebody that would be developing potentially heart disease?
From lab panels. So it's more and more common that children are having higher levels of lipids that they don't want. Also that they know this because autopsies of children that they run.
Wow.
And they can see calcification in their arteries. So that's how we know it's becoming more prevalent in a younger age. Usually, sorry, go ahead.
No, you.
Well, usually that's in a population sometimes where it is heavy genetics, but also that populations don't have access to health supportive foods.
Would you recommend in those instances, what would you recommend for people to help mitigate that?
High cholesterol?
Yeah.
It would be different for everybody. Well, I mean, there would be some general things that I'd recommend. There's nutraceuticals that I really like for lowering cholesterol. EPA and DHA, having higher doses of those is helpful. Some plant sterols can be really helpful. There's things that we want to take away from the diet, and there's things that we want to add. The things that we want to take away is saturated fats. I know it's kind of controversial with some people, but if somebody's really struggling with cholesterol, you do want to mitigate how much saturated fat somebody has in the diet. Processed carbohydrates are huge. You also want to make sure you know what's going on with their blood sugar, because blood sugar and cholesterol tends to go hand in hand. So that's something that you want to pinpoint. So you're not just looking in a tunnel at somebody's cardiac health.
Recommend someone wear a glucose monitor for that? Potentially.
So the thing with glucose monitors, they're an awesome tool. Sometimes I think they create more anxiety than what they're helping. And it depends on the person. Some people are not going to have that anxiety. Some people are. There's a lot of tricks and whistles that we could do for our metabolic health. Sometimes they're really helpful. Sometimes they're detrimental based on the person's personality. And I see that a lot in my practice, where people are spinning their nervous system into a sympathetic state because of all of these markers that they have, and they don't really understand how to interpret them. And
they get obsessed with the data.
Obsessed with the data, and they get a lot of anxiety. And sometimes it could even turn into cases of disordered eating.
Yeah. I see it with the wearable tech, like the Oura Ring and things like that. People become obsessed with the numbers.
I can't wear a sleep monitor because I historically have had issues with sleep. So if I am wearing it and I know something's tracking me, my sleep is going to suffer. Yeah. And I know that's not everybody. Some people it's very beneficial. Yeah.
Totally. I take breaks. I just put mine on last night because we all caught a cold for my kids. We all caught the cold in the house, and I'll put it on when I start to feel unwell, and I'll track for the week or so that I'm trying to get better to see when my body's recovered. I find is actually really helpful during those periods of time. And then once I'm fully recovered, I'll take it off probably for another 3-4 months. Because typically for that, it's pretty accurate.
And it's helpful for you to make like actionable changes to correct whatever the issue is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in
normally
that case, it totally is great.
Yeah. Normally it's just resting more. It's not exercising. It's taking it easy. It's maybe taking like a 30, 40-minute siesta and literally just chilling a little bit more, focused time for that. And normally that's what shifts everything. And then, I keep everything else the same, go to sleep early, typically eat the same things, maybe lighten up the load at the gym, but that 30, 40-minute like midday afternoon kind of like nap really helps.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that's giving you the marker. It says rest more, Avi, and then you rest more. So it's a perfect tool for you. And for a lot of people, it is a perfect tool. But for some people, it's so we're human beings and we're also incredibly different. So giving generalized, so this person should do this, for me, never seems to work. Right. Because it's really like figuring out what is the right thing for this very specific person.
Right.
I want to circle back to the cholesterol because I mentioned what we should take away. So I mentioned saturated fat, refined carbohydrates, alcohol is a huge one. Because oftentimes I see people, especially younger people in their 30s who have stressful jobs, they eat really well, they're spending a lot of time at the gym, but they still drink a lot of alcohol. Mm-hmm. And that's, not good for our cardiac health. It's not good for cancer prevention. It's not good for a lot of things. I'm not judging anybody, but you want to make sure that you understand where the root is there.
Yeah.
What to add to your diet and to your lifestyle if you're trying to work on lowering cholesterol? Non-starchy vegetables, fiber. So a lot of it. So usually when we think about our meal, we have a side of vegetables. We want to see that be the bulk of our meal. And there's a shift there in the quantity. And I usually see a lot of improvements in cholesterol when we do that. Everyone's different. Some people, it's so genetic that anything that we do, it's very difficult to move that number. That's rare, but it does happen. But vegetables, salads, specifically non-starchy vegetables, because there's so many amazing phytonutrients that are cardioprotective, and that fiber is very beneficial. Exercise and stress
I've heard that before too, like where people have the meat or the protein be the side and the vegetables are the main component of the meal. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you typically do in your meal prep and like the way you eat, or is it?
It depends. I feel for me personally, my body needs different things at different times. I was just pretty sick last week, so I've been eating completely different because I'm just kind of doing what I feel like is going to make me feel better right now, and it's not.
What does that consist of when you're sick?
Well, I had a stomach thing, so I've been eating a lot of bread because it's just very neutral, and I never eat bread. And I'm not saying people should never eat bread. It's just something that I do. I don't always love to talk about the things that I do nutritionally because, especially in the space of social media, I see this a lot where something works really well for an individual. And then that individual will say, this is the thing that everybody has to do. This works. I feel amazing. You have to do this. If you don't do this, you're wrong. You're not doing the right thing. But everyone is so incredibly different that it's very malaligned with truth, in my opinion. Yeah. So when you are working with somebody like yourself, you've worked with a lot of different individuals, you understand how people respond to different things. Like with myself, I work with a lot of different individuals. I understand people respond to different things. That's who you want to be aligned with if you're looking for somebody to help you in your health journey, not somebody who is, a talking head on the internet because this thing made them feel great. Maybe that thing will also make you feel great. That's awesome. Then done. Look no further. But oftentimes that's not the case. And oftentimes I'm detangling these ideas and these dietary habits with my clients that have ended up hurting more than helping.
So they come to you and they say, hey, I saw this thing on intermittent fasting or carnivore or something like that. And then you guys have to kind of walk that back a bit. Potentially, not specifically those two, but just those are fad things that I see a lot of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see a lot of under-eating in my practice. Under-eating and a lot of food fear. Where people have seen a lot of foods be vilified on the internet and they they're not feeling good. They feel sick. So they see this on the internet and okay, this food isn't good. I'm not going to eat this because it's going to contribute to me feeling unwell. And then by the time they're finished, they have a very limited amount of foods.
Right.
Especially somebody who has gut issues. The thing is if you're eating a very limited amount of foods, if you have low nutrient diversity in your diet, you're likely to become more reactive to that small subset of foods that you're eating than if you have more diversity. So sometimes it ends up making the problem even worse. I mean, it depends. Everything's different with different individuals, but it's tricky. And there's a lot of dogmatic views on nutritional fad diets. And I think if anybody is like, this is the only way and there's no way outside of this way, then that's maybe not somebody that is very trustworthy.
Right.
I work with a lot of different diets. I work with people who are vegan, people who have different restrictions because of religious obligations. And I try to find balance in each type of diet where somebody feels morally and ethically and personally good about the decisions that they're putting into their body.
Do you think there are benefits to fasting for people that obviously under eating is one thing, but then someone who says, hey, every season I like to do a 3-4 day water fast to reset my gut health, something like that. Like I heard Dr. Walter Luongo talk about the benefits for autophagy and minimizing cancer in the body or trying to mitigate any potential cancerous cells. Like just curious on that one, because I've spoken to a lot of people about that in the past.
Yeah, so I don't take my clients through fast. If that's something that they want to do, I support them. There's situations in which I advise against fasting. And that would be if I'm working with a woman who has hormonal imbalances, specifically with the thyroid and with sex hormones. Because remember how we were talking about when you aren't eating all throughout the day, if you have the stressful tech job, your cortisol is spiked and you're mobilizing glucose, that's happening when you're fasting. You're still running off of carbs, even if you're not eating them. Right. And then there's ketosis. So that's when you're not running off of carbs, but that's not really part of this discussion right now. So you're still running off of them and your stress levels are elevated when you're fasting. And for some people, that's okay for them. That's okay for their metabolism. They're not going to have any real negative repercussions from that. But some people are going to be very sensitive to that spike in stress hormones. So that's when you want to be careful. When somebody's training for a sports event or they're exercising heavily, doing a fast, I advise against that. You're more prone to injury when you're not refueling afterwards or fueling before your workout. So I don't recommend somebody does that. Fasting can be helpful if you are closing out, like say, I don't know, up to 16 hours of a day, if somebody's trying to eat in a caloric deficit. So there's many ways to lose weight. Right. The way to lose weight is being in a caloric deficit. There's many ways to achieve that caloric deficit. For some people, some of my clients, if they're like, I just do so well in the day, but like 9 o'clock hits me and I just want to get my box of cookies, I just want to go nuts.
They're trying to make up for lost time.
Yeah, or maybe they did eat their calories. Maybe when we're tracking calories and they already ate, at a very reasonable deficit that wasn't too steep, that shouldn't make them overeat. But it's something about that witching hour that just really gets them. Yeah. If we close off their eating window at 7, that could be really helpful for that specific person. You know, so it's always a case by case scenario. The research on fasting isn't incredibly strong where I feel motivated to recommend people do it. If somebody does a 3-day water fast and they feel amazing and all of their markers are fine, then okay, have at it, do what makes you feel good. Listen to your body, tune in, listen to the results of labs that you're getting if you're also incorporating that in your wellness plan. Everybody responds to things differently. Women typically have a more difficult time when it comes to fluctuations in stress hormones, or more complicated hormonally than men are.
And what about morning routines? Like I know from talking to Libby and, your guys' relationship, you're really, big on your morning routine. And for her, I've seen a major shift in the way she approaches her morning when it comes to coffee, when it comes to nourishing herself before coffee and just kind of getting into a good headspace for her day. And it's made a big difference. What would be some of the tips or things you'd recommend for people that just want to start to kind of get the ball rolling in the right direction first thing when they start the day?
Okay, so one of my favorite things to do in the morning is to get outside, get some fresh air, some sunshine, move your body, go for a walk. That's not always practical for everybody, depending on the season or where they live. I love that for myself. I try to develop morning routines with people based on what they have the capacity for. I like to not have coffee right away because I want to give the body a chance to naturally, because our cortisol, I just talked about cortisol like it's a bad thing.
Right.
Cortisol is not inherently bad. It is if it's dysregulated and chronically high. But cortisol is supposed to be the highest in the morning. That's what wakes us up.
Right.
That's what gets things going. So to give our body that time for that natural response is helpful. Moving your body is wonderful in the morning if you have the time for it. Exercising. Make sure that you're eating within an hour of waking is also helpful for most people. Some people, if they are fasting, they like to kind of push out their eating time later on in the day. It's cool. That's their choice. But like I said before, our cortisol is raised. It's also raising to mobilize that glycogen to give us energy because we were just in a fast during our slumber. So how to cut that cortisol spike with giving ourselves that glycogen, like balanced obviously with some healthy fats and a good amount of protein and fiber, is also helpful to have kind of a smooth start mentally to our day. Right. The way we start our day is kind of a preview of how our day is going to go, right? So I like meditations in the morning. You know, I'm not amazing at doing it every day. I'm not amazing at having my routine be perfect every day. But when it is, I do find that I have more productivity at work. I feel more connected. I feel happier. The thing that makes me the happiest lately is I've been getting up and walking and I'm not like a huge runner, but trying to run partially around the park for about 45 minutes and coming home. And I feel so good to just see, because I work from home like most people do. I'm sitting in my computer all day. I'm sitting in my office, just seeing other people, seeing people walk their dogs. Like I like that. So looking at a tree, seeing a flower, you know, like that's really nice for me. Yeah.
And how have you acclimated to the elevation there?
It's tough. So I feel a lot better. I naturally have low blood pressure. So that's something that can be exacerbated with the elevation. Drinking copious amount of water with electrolytes and doing some of the breath work that you showed me. I still do it.
Yeah, I believe you. And what about the water? I know going to Mexico, Montezuma's Revenge, is not always easy to get high quality water. How has that been for you?
So I just do bottled water. I used to have a water filter that a lot of people use here, and that was not for me. And I learned
it wasn't
the hard
working.
way.
Yeah.
And it was a new filter. You know, I mean, there's a learning curve to living in a different place for everything.
Sure.
So I just do all bottled water. There's plastic in it. It's, you know what, we do what we can where we can.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So not obviously, but with my clients I work with, I try to eliminate plastic through their food source, their water source as much as possible. But when you're in a place where that's the safest water for you to drink, you do what you got to do. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Unless you're going to get Mountain Valley Spring or something delivered down
they don't
to
have
Mexico.
That. Trust me, I checked.
I'm sure you looked into all of that. Yeah. Yeah. Listen, it's part of it. When you move, you have to kind of make concessions for certain things and, you know, try to make the best out of it.
No place is 100% perfect. So you make, like you said, concessions. And there's a lot of things I love about being here. And
what are some of your favorite things?
My favorite things. My favorite thing is being here with my partner. You know, that makes me really happy. I love the trees in the neighborhood that I live in. I love, I don't know if this is real or if it's just a perception that I have, but there's a slower pace. Yeah. I think people are more inclined to enjoy life. There's less of a rat race. And again, this is me coming from, I'm in my office most of the time. It's just the perception that I have, which could be totally off. And I recognize that.
But Mexico City is still a metropolitan city, though. People are moving. There's a lot happening, but it's not necessarily at the same pace as like a New York, maybe.
And I think that probably is happening a lot in the city, but not where I am. Not where I'm, because I'm not going to an office. I'm not in the rat race at all. I'm very far removed from it. There's something that my partner says and other people that have grown up here say often. I just hear life is meant to be enjoyed.
Right.
And that's something that's really kind of shifted the way that I look at my practice, the way I work with clients, the way I'm looking at my life. I really think that's true. What life is meant to be enjoyed. And we do all these things with our breath work, with nutrition, to feel the best that we can, to have the most well-rounded and beautiful life experience that we can.
Right.
You know, and sometimes we get into, I have before I get, this has to be perfect. I have to eat this way or do this. I have to get to the gym or whatever. We all do that to enjoy. We shouldn't be doing that, suffering through that.
Right.
You know, sometimes we just suffer through that.
Right. Crushing the Sweet Green Afterberries boot camp where I killed myself. And now all of a sudden I'm like, all right, let's go. You know, it's tough. It's tough, you know, and I watched this last maybe 6 months ago with Libby, the documentary series on the Blue Zones. And that was something we really both took from it, was that they're just enjoying, you know, no matter what Blue Zone it was, they're amongst friends, family, they walked a lot. None of them ate the same foods because they're in all different parts of the world. A lot of those cultures drink, you know, they're not drinking, but they're enjoying, they're happy. They're happy. Singing, they're playing, they're having fun, they're walking to their neighbor's house, and they're just joyful.
That's what it is. It's about being happy. And that sounds kind of a little bit reductionistic to some people, but that's really what it's about. When we're happy and we're whole, we're well. You know, and it's really, I think it's very, very hard in our society to find that for a lot of people. The way it feels like society's designed right now, it seems like it's getting harder, to be honest with you. I know in the States, and just seems like there's a lot of news all the time. There's a lot of stress all the time. And we've become almost addicted to getting that stress, getting that shot of cortisol all the time from the stress, from the news, from just the markets crashing, from this, from that, and the other. And I think we're losing sight of what it means to be happy and to feel like human and to really connect with each other. And maybe those morning runs where you say good morning or buenos dias to the people you're passing and you smile. I mean, that's a really important part of it, I think, really having those moments of connection. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the thing is our nervous system was not designed for a 24-hour news cycle. It's important to be informed, but you can choose a time in your day that you're going to read about what's going on instead of letting it hit you as it's released all throughout the day, because that's not healthy. Yeah. Do you talk about that with your clients ever? Do you ever feel like your client is in a news kind of cycle, or is that crossing a line? Like, do you ever feel like you have to help them set parameters around the times a day they allow themselves to get too stressed out? You know, I'm trying to think. I can't think of one client that I know who has this problem. Maybe they have this problem, I'm not aware of it, but people in my life. Yeah. That's a whole different thing. That's another question. You know, how often are you giving, you know, unsolicited advice to your family? Never. I never give unsolicited advice because I just don't, it's not my place. You know, people hire me to give them advice, and that's what if you're like for. A family member says they're struggling with something? But they don't necessarily ask you your opinion, but they're just telling you that they're struggling with something. Would you then maybe say, I have a recommendation, or you don't try not to get involved? Smart. No, it's not that I try not to get involved, because I think that when somebody's struggling and they tell you that they're struggling, they're not looking for a recommendation. They're looking for somebody to be with them in their pain. Right. When we're feeling sad or stressed or we're having a hard time, it can feel really isolating and lonely. And when we talk about it with someone, we're looking for somebody to be with us in that moment. Right. And then just the act of having empathy or listening is healing for that. I think that's much more healing than saying, hey, you should go for a walk in the morning. You know? Right. Yeah, you know, totally. Like, it oftentimes when somebody's struggling, I find that they typically know what to do, and they don't need to hear it from me or from anybody else. They just want to have a companion in the pain that they're experiencing, a compassionate companion in the pain that they're having. Right. I don't want to hear it. Yeah, do you? Totally. No, not at all. Yeah. Sometimes it's good to get the advice, but, you know, I guess it's certain people I ask for it, and other people I just, you know,
try to keep it to myself. I've got a therapist for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, if I see somebody who's doing something harmful to themselves or somebody else, it's like a moral responsibility to say something, but that's like not often. I can't really think of like a scenario that I've been in that, like a situation where I've been in that scenario in the near past.
Do you feel like you're learning to enjoy life differently now that you moved to Mexico? You mentioned your partner and you're seeing people, they live a different way down there, obviously, you know.
Yeah, I find that it's a much more community-oriented culture, whereas in the U.S. we're very individualistic, where it's just kind of me against the world, you know. And I don't feel that with the family that I've developed here. You know, even my partner's family, it's not me against the world. It's like, do you need something? We're here for you. And it's like a very healing, odd, different experience that I'm having, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes I find myself like, I just need, you know, like, I can do this on my own. It's like, we don't have to do things on our own. Like the Biology of Belief, or the book I'm reading right now, the section that I'm on is about community. Organisms are stronger when we can rely on each other. I know if somebody needs my help with something, I'm more than happy to give it, you know? And I think that sometimes we forget if we need help that maybe somebody else feels like they would be more than happy to help us. But we're like, no, I can do everything by myself. I don't need anybody. We do need people, you know? And that's been something for me personally that's been a point of evolution in my life, is really accepting the fact that I do need people. I can't do everything by myself. I want to be a part of a community. I want to contribute to that community, and I want to feel held by that community. That's not easy to find, or it's also sometimes not easy to accept. Right. And I want to feel like with my clients that I'm part of their community and they can feel held by that.
It's so nice. It's so nice you found this partner and this life in Mexico. I remember when we spoke, you know, when you're getting ready to go, you know, I don't, you know, who knows how these situations could go. You know, you go for a month, you're like, all right, I'm good. Time to go back to the States. But you found a life there that really feels in alignment with what you want and crave in life, and like the nourishment, not just through food, but through love, through community. It's really, really happy. I'm really happy to hear that.
Thank you. Who knew? You know, you never know where the wind's going to blow you.
Yeah.
I never thought I would end up here. And it was never the plan. It was like you fall in love and then your whole life changes, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. So it's cool. And who knows where we'll be in 5 years, 10 years, you know.
You guys talk about that ever? Like moving somewhere else, to a different country or another part of Mexico?
Yeah. So my dream would have been to live in Europe. But it's very difficult with the time zone. I like living out of the country. I probably will move back to the States at some point. But this just seemed like it made sense because of him and his work. And I do like it here. Yeah. But eventually I'd like to be in Europe. But, you know, who knows if that's going to work
Where
out.
in particular in Europe?
Maybe Spain.
Nice.
Who knows? Because, you know, I'll be hyper fluent in Spanish by then. So
that's right. You'll be hyper fluent. I hear that.
And not be able to understand anything that anybody says there.
That's right. It's a totally different accent. It's a much more complicated accent for me. I have to give a shout out to Jacqueline for introducing us probably like 2 years ago now, maybe a year and a half ago. I recently saw an Instagram post she made about coming back from Japan, and how when she watches videos on TikTok of Japan, she cries and she gets emotional and she doesn't know why, but she's like very joyful in it. But it seems like that experience really was really impactful for her. And
I didn't see that. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, I know you're not on Instagram very much, but yeah, she posted it. It was a story. It was one of her many stories, and I saw it, and I was like, wow, that's because I'm obviously learning Japanese. I have a desire, a dream to go there and spend a significant amount of time there. And then when I see something like that and see her so affected by that experience she had there, really so connected to that culture, it's really amazing. So.
It's beautiful how putting yourself in cultures you're not familiar with opens you up in this lovely way that you didn't expect. I really like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing how you went down there and you opened up to this whole new experience. So I'm really impressed. It's really, it's a lot, it's a lot to shift your whole life. And it's of course convenient. You have this great job that you can do from anywhere, remote, but still, I mean, you're starting from complete scratch,
Yeah, it's working out. It's good. Come visit.
Great. Yeah,
Bring
we will.
Libby and the kids. Yeah,
we definitely will. We definitely will.
I
for
love
sure.
that.
Well, it was really, really nice talking. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your expertise and your heart on this conversation. So definitely look forward to catching up again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Avi. It was really, really nice.